I don't know.
Can you scoot over, Shell? You don't need to be
Searching
this
that
close.
shit.
I don't want to scoot, so I'm not listening to the chair
I'm not
creaking.
be on screen.
Scoot.
There you go.
for me, Shell.
Shell, like, whenever we do podcasts, whenever we're recording non-podcast, Shell, sits a reasonable distance, but Shell, because we're together on the webcam, she's like, I gotta be as close to you as possible. We've got these, like, leather chairs that rub against each other, and it's like, creak, creak, creak.
Well, it's because they have arms. So
So, Bird, I heard you played,
we're learning that Wander's not into ASMR.
No.
So welcome to
do
Save the
you consider
Universe
a leather
episode.
chair sound to be ASMR? I consider that to just be like...
Yeah, that's just infuriating.
Wait, your example
Cool.
of ASMR is the sound that wind makes in a camcorder?
Cool. So yeah, Wander was about to lead into the first topic.
Yeah, so Bird, I heard you played a waifu game.
Please
I
talk
did play a
about it so
waifu
that we can
game.
make everyone stop talking about it forever.
Yeah,
there's so many of them.
I
But
played a
which one?
game called Doki Doki Literature Club.
I've
and-
heard of it.
Yeah, Ladybird and I played through it this morning. And we well, I mean, I heard about it. It's like one of those kind of meme games like Undertale and stuff like that where they're like, "Oh, we want you to play this," and it's really popular and a lot like just word of mouth especially. And so I think all of us have heard of it. And I assume all of us have people saying, play Doki Doki Literature Club and stuff like that. Well, allow me to dash all those people's dreams. Because I think that between all of us, I'm the only one who played it, and I'm going to say that I don't think any of us are going to actually play it and record it. So
Oh, did he not record it? Did you just
I
play
did
it?
not record it.
off
No, I just
camera?
played it. I played it.
So,
I didn't play it
what-
because I thought it would be too. I didn't record it because I thought it'd be too memey, but I wanted to see what it would be like.
Oh.
So
if
what's
that
your
makes sense.
abysmal review then?
It's slow. It's glacially slow.
Well, it's a visual novel, right?
It's a visual novel, and like the problem. I don't want to talk about it because the more I talk about it, like it kind of undermines it. And there are people that are probably big fans of this, or people that are really interested in playing it. So you should play it, but like we won't. But like the problem is that it's one of those games that has a lot of commentary about games in it. It's very meta. It's very fourth wall breaking, kind of like that very trendy thing that I've kind of seen a lot of games do over the past couple of years. And this
Is it
is
because
just
it's
something. Yeah.
Is it because it's like a literature club? Do they talk about common like plot tropes or things while speaking of literature?
No, I
or-
wish that would actually
No?
be kind of neat. I don't want to
Oh.
spoil it, but it does talk about that sort of stuff.
You know what's
Like,
really good at
there's actually-
spoiling it is a Google image search or opening the Steam page and seeing the news feed about the game.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's very, very, very easy to spoil. But it's heavily reliant on a twist. It's very like meta and fourth wall breaky. It's super duper graphic. So heed those warnings if you want to play the game. It's very, very intense.
Now,
There's
we've
death, right?
Yes.
What?
It's one of those visual novels that's like, we're gonna get edgy.
Oh, it's very edgy.
I didn't
like-
know it was
I
gonna be
feel like-
murder. Like the only image I've ever seen of it is like maybe a redheaded girl and a blue-haired girl with like I don't know.
Yeah,
That seems to be
they're
the
there.
point. Like it wants to surprise you, but at the same time, I've heard that if you launch the game, it warns you about graphic content, as if and like violent content. I think, which is like
Yeah,
kind of
and
dispels
to be
the
fair,
shock factor.
to be fair, it is very graphic and very violent. So I think that was a good call because whoa, it's heavy. But
So
the
were you
problem I
playing it
have with
alone
it,
or with Ladybird?
I played it with Ladybird, and I thought it was going to be a very different game from what it ended up being. But we played it together, and it's just like I guess like I was saying, it's something that I've seen before. Like I've seen lots of video games that talk about like that break the fourth wall and like talk about what it's like to be a video game and like playing video games and like what it's like to make video games and stuff like that. And this game goes into that, and it doesn't really make it all that different from anything I've seen before. It's very much like stuff that I've seen even in Flash games going back to like 2008 that like dive into that sort of territory. And then I guess the other thing I've mentioned before that it's really slow. I really can't emphasize this enough. It is very, very slow. I would say the game takes about 4 hours for it to start to kind of pick up the pace and become interesting. And after that, it slows down again dramatically for like another 2 hours. And then it kind of drives towards the end a little bit more. And for the message and the content of the game, the pacing being that slow, like, doesn't justify it and is like excruciating to get through. Because outside of the stuff that matters, it's an extremely, extremely like on the nose, just like visual novel dating thing, like very, very, very transparent.
I feel like it would be torture for me to play.
Yes,
I have
it would
no
be.
interest
That's why
in
I'm
any dating sim ever.
That's kind of why I'm bringing this up, because I think it will like it's kind of like eating, for you guys it would be like eating a sandwich with like one slice of cheese in the middle that's really, really good, but like the bread is like 4 inches thick.
I have played like 150 episodes of Yakuza games and have specifically avoided the one part that's a dating sim. I'm like, oh, it's a dating sim. Goodbye forever. And I just left.
The other thing that I think is really, they kind of diminished it for me on a kind of a more personal level, I guess, was that a number of years ago, I had the same sort of thoughts about like how to make an interesting visual novel game. And I thought to myself, like, oh, what would be really cool is if I made the visual novel where, things start to break down a little bit and it becomes very weird and surreal, and like what you're seeing isn't matching up with what you're reading, and like playing with the format and stuff like that. And so I never made anything like that, but that's sort of what this experience is like. And I thought to myself, like, well, if I had this idea and I didn't even feel like making it, and that means that like lots of people have probably had this idea, and then this guy was just the first person to make it.
Do it in any kind of like releasable sense, yeah.
Yeah, and something about that just kind of like actually made me like it a little bit less, weirdly enough, because I felt like it didn't,
because you had the ideal already, so you didn't. It wasn't like
it didn't live up to your expectations of what that idea could have been.
And then the problem is, if you ever want to make something in the future, people are going to be like, you based it off of this.
Yes.
And it's like, no.
That's the most personal disappointment ever.
I know. It's really weird. But I guess what I'm saying is that, like, my assumption is then that, like, lots of people have had an idea to make something like this. And this was the first guy that actually made it, which sort of diminishes the creativity of it to me in a weird way, because I can see like how it kind of would come to be, because I can see like, this is how I would make it, so I can see how they would make it, and for these reasons I devalued making it, so I then like have this weird process where I'm applying it to them and like their work, the reasons that I wouldn't make it, which is super personal and super weird, but that's just kind of the way that it goes. And then one final note about it is that, like, in a lot of video games and, like, stuff that I've been working on personally and, like, stories that I've written, a lot of them I kind of really enjoy the fourth wall breaking, like, meta aspect and stuff like that. And I've always kind of wanted to put, like, a little point of that into the stuff that I work on, even though I never finished anything and showed it off and stuff like that. But after seeing something do that and be very successful, I no longer want to see that idea done by anybody else, because I feel like it's going to become trite from this point forward.
What, the fourth wall breaking?
Well,
yeah,
fourth wall breaking, like, I know people have always talked about Deadpool breaking the fourth wall, and then there are a lot of there's just been this rash
Undertale,
of,
Pony Island.
Yeah. It's exactly like the Pony Island and Undertale type of thing, and like this is kind of the latest in a series of games that like explore the same themes in their fourth wall breaking that Undertale and Pony Island did. And
there's also the horror game I'm
starting
Scared. You guys ever hear about that one?
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Like, I'm Scared would like crash when you died, and then a new text file would show up in the folder with the executable and stuff like that. And like the text files would contain information, and then you'd launch the executable, and the executable would be in a different place than it was last time. And I'm like, what's happening?
Yeah, so stuff like that. And I mean, I won't spoil this game too much, but it does go into things like that happening, and it has those mechanics, and it feels done. Like, at this point, it just feels like stuff that I've seen already, and I don't want to see other games do it. I mean, it would be like impressed by a movie. It's like watching a movie that acknowledges like that it's a movie. Like, it doesn't mean anything new, because that's been something that people did 100 years ago.
So
like,
I take
they
it
broke
you
the
wouldn't
fourth
be
wall like that.
You wouldn't be fond of watching series of unfortunate events where I think it's Patrick Warburton or something just keeps narrating directly to the camera in every other scene.
That's fine, as long as they don't make that the central purpose of the movie.
Oh, Shakespeare too was funny with that as well.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Shakespeare did it with plays and stuff, and as a result, you don't see new plays don't come out that say like, "Ho ho, we're a play. This is cool." Like, I think it's time to, like, I'm glad that somebody made this, and I think it's cool, and I think that it's neat to see something that I
earnest
envisioned
instead of meta.
Yeah, it's neat to me to see something that I envisioned being something that could be made actually be made. Like, that's kind of a neat experience, but I don't want to see anything more like it again. Like, I don't want there to be like rip-offs or like leaping off from it and stuff. Like, I think it needs to, the themes that it explores needs to be done at this point.
What about all the games?
That's the best way I can describe and review this without spoiling anything. I think I did an okay job.
I noticed that there's also been a lot of games and movies recently that, especially in regards to like video games, they break that wall and they have the characters acknowledge that they are in a game, whether they're the human that somehow finds themselves trapped in it, or they're the characters that become self-aware that things aren't as they should be. Like Wreck-It Ralph was doing it. All of these new series.
The Lego movie
was probably one of the earlier anime, right? And now you have things like SAO and
there's a huge trend.
Horizon.
There's a huge trend in like Japanese
Log
media
Horizon,
that's like people stuck in video games, and they all do it so poorly. Like, there's a billion different flavors of the same thing, and it's like,
that's exactly what it is. It's like, even when you're playing Undertale or something, where it's like Sans' big thing at the very end of the game is that he can manipulate like saves, and he acknowledges like, oh, you can just save and reload the game and stuff like that. Like, that, even when I saw that, like, that was already an old idea. So this is a game that takes that and like is the same flavor of that sort of stuff, and it's not new. It wasn't new like to these other games like Pony Island and stuff like that, and it's not new in this one, and I'm getting bored of it.
I think one of the reasons I kind of like when I was playing Undertale, I was doing my full-time job still, so I had an interruption and I couldn't get back to it for a while. But then I think one of the reasons why I've been resistant to getting back to it for like the last 2 years now, despite people keep bringing it up constantly, and why I bounced off of Doki Doki and stuff like that, is that like it's like a really specific issue that only Let's Player can really experience, but it's this weird feeling of like knowing that your audience is doing this like was almost like dance monkey dance thing where it's like, I've seen another Let's Player do this exact moment and they reacted this way, and now I want to see you get to that same part and react the same way, basically. And it's like this weird feeling of like, I want to see every Let's Player play the same game and react to the same part. And I'm like, I just want to play some weird shit. We were discussing this
before the podcast, and I described it as like playing a game and you feel the whole time like there's somebody just like watching over your shoulder with their face open, just like, are you going to get the punchline? Are you gonna get it? Here it comes.
Yeah.
And like,
I can't believe he's not commenting on the music is so a thing I get in specific parts of Zelda games and stuff. And I'm like, I feel that in Zelda too, when I'm playing the two that aren't new. because I've been playing Ocarina and Wind Waker, and there's so many moments of like, they want me to I know they're expecting me to react to specific things in specific ways at different times, and it's like I don't like that feeling the way it's nice playing. It's one of the nice things about playing new games constantly is that there are not so many pre-existing expectations of how you're going to react to every single moment of it, which is nice.
And I suppose when I said earlier that I didn't want to record it because I felt like it'd be too memey, that really speaks to the heart of like what I'm talking about, where I'd feel like this constant pressure to be like, oh, I need to react to the meme way for people to get like their total enjoyment out of this.
Yeah,
you know?
and so like I always wonder about like if I go back to Undertale and I like relearn where I am and figure out again the steps I need to take to get the pacifist ending because I lost track of where I was after 2 years. And then what? I'm going to recreate the same thing that everyone else already did and hope I do it right? Like, it's so unappealing, even though I hate not having it be unfinished. Because, I finished neutral, is what happened.
In that vein, we were playing Last of Us for Halloween and then a couple days afterwards, and one of the developers of Last of Us was there arguing with us on the morality in our actions. And I was like, huh.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
What was that?
What?
Last of Us, remember? The one of the artists.
Well, what were they arguing with us about? Because I didn't know there was an argument going on.
He didn't think Joel did the right thing at the very end of the game. And I'm not going to say more than that because it is such a big moment. And, anybody that hasn't seen it.
I actually thought that it was bad initially too, but then I thought through it and I was like, I know why he did that.
I was like fully behind this decision and I was like totally vindicated the whole way through. But the developer was talking about like, how this is like such a awful thing for many reasons, and I'm just like, nope, don't agree with you.
I'm with the developer.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a divisive thing. I'm just baffled by the fact that now you got Naughty Dog people in your audience. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, this is a live stream,
how is this
so
scaling up this much?
I recently got partnered on Twitch, so I'm starting to get more viewers too.
Next year, you have like Ben Kuchera in your audience.
That would be weird.
Oh wait, no, I beat you to that. Wait, I just remembered that he was watching our Artemis series. I forgot about that.
So can I tell 2 short stories before we move on?
Yeah,
to more longer topics.
One thing about Last of Us, real quick, is
okay.
I had one issue with it, which is that so the game ends with a decision, right? But it's not your decision.
Yeah.
But they make you play the decision like it's your decision, and that kind of pissed me off.
Yeah,
because they frame it like you can make a choice in that moment, like it's a Deus Ex type game where you do in like gameplay decisions in the moment, like about what to do, but you can't at all. And in fact, it makes the scene worse because you can like sit there and control it and just like kind of break the scene by refusing to do the thing for a while and kind of ruining the climax of the game in a weird way. I thought that was a weird choice.
Yeah, it was. I hope they learn from it for the sequel, because I mean they were fantastic games. The first one was fantastic, and the second one looks like it's going to be amazing.
Is it like those games in which you're supposed to do like a quick time action or something, and it's maybe the final decision of the game, and you think that there's choice, but if you quote unquote fail the choice, you just reload to the same choice again, and then
didn't you?
I just immediately selected the decision. I didn't.
Yeah, he didn't wait.
So she didn't know that there was a moment. Okay, no, it's just you sit there. You just sit there until you do the thing you're supposed to do, and you can sit there for like 20 minutes if you want to. I think you can even
weird,
like
because I'm thinking
shoot
back to the
like
scene.
walls and crap and like waste time. It's a weird choice that not be just a cutscene. They want to
those
make
old
you
Zelda
feel
games where it's like, do you accept this quest? Yes, no. And you say no, and they're like,
the answer.
Are you
sure?
Yes.
Or you accidentally press yes when no is the second option, and then Gabora's like, oh, then I will give you my long rant all over again.
What they did is they made it so the final interaction is that you have to do the action that Joel's doing, so it feels like you're complicit in it or in on the decision that he's making. But they didn't want to do like a cheesy quick time event on the screen because it would ruin the moment. But they did something else that can also ruin the moment. So it's a weird thing. It's weird.
So, topic change if you don't mind, just so we can get through some things. So I'm playing a game called Seven, which I would throw in the exact same bin as Elex. If you guys have been paying attention to that game from the last podcast, it's a game that like is good, sort of. If it weren't for like predecessors, it would have stood out as like an amazing game. But as it stands, it just kind of ends up as being this like sort of good product, but like compared to even Dragon Age Inquisition, it just ends up feeling a little bit janky and like, you know, would have been amazing a couple of years ago. So 7 is kind of much the same way. It's if you guys have seen Satellite Rain or whatever, it's one of those like open world explore, heist, steal stuff, so on and so forth type games. And you know, very high focus on stealth. Almost immediately you're thrown into a you have to heist something from a mansion, which is fine. But they don't tutorialize it at all, so they don't teach you how to stealth attack. And in fact, unlike most stealth-based games, you can't kill your enemies in one shot. So pretty much attacking them is like not a failure state because you can fight them off, but it's like an immediate. Well, stealth is out the window. Time to fight, and then you get like mobbed by guards, which is usually a failure state. But in this case, I tried sneaking in, got caught for what I thought was kind of bullshit reasons, tried to fight, and then every single guard in the area shows up to attack me. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So there's one guard in the very beginning that's supposed to like kind of tutorialize combat for you. I killed him, took his clothing, and I'm just like, screw it. Let's see what happens when I just put clothing on. What's the worst that could happen? Well, it turns out if you put the clothing on, every NPC in the game reacts to you as though you're a part of that faction. So sure, I was suddenly a guard. Makes sense. I could walk in front of them and steal shit, and they wouldn't do anything because I belonged there. But they would react to my presence as though they could hear me without the outfit on. So I'd walk by a guard, and they'd be like, "Who goes there?" And they'd like turn to look at me. And
oh, hey, Steve.
Yeah, I'd just take something in front of them, and they'd like walk towards me, getting suspicious, but like it never fills up because they can't see me. I'm actually considered invisible by the game, even though like I'm, you know, very visible. I'm just in disguise. So I finished the tutorial. You get captured. You get thrown in prison. Whatever. And you're almost immediately like given a bunch of side quests so you can like start building your supplies back because you've lost all your thief gear and your weapons and stuff like that. Instead, I immediately just robbed some guy blind because he would never turn around. So I just took his weapon because there's a pickpocketing thing in the game. And so I just pickpocket the guy, take his weapons, run off, find one guard. And I hit him a couple times, then run away, hide in a bush, and like 30 guards mob the whole area. And I'm just like, they're not going to find me, right? And they all stand next to the bush that I'm directly next to. And they're like, where'd he go? He's gone. And then, you know, they lose the little alert symbol. And then I just walk out in front of them, walk back, hit the guy some more, kill him, take his clothes, hide back in the bushes again. And then from this point on, I have become one of the like end game guards for the game. And like when you scan over them, it says like impossible to fight, like don't even bother, challenge the lethal and stuff like that. And I'm now wearing his equipment. So, you know, there's all these objectives that's like sneak back to the checkpoint. I just walk straight through it. I was supposed to like steal something from a guarded facility. I just walk in, I grab it, and none of them react except for like being like, "Who goes there?" So like I walked into a warehouse that's supposed to have all these like valuable things in them, and to be fair, there was actually like a fair amount of valuable stuff in there, and I was just grabbing it in front of them, and they didn't even react. They were just like, "Who goes there?" And so I left like with endgame equipment within the first hour of the game, and I've more or less been repeating through the entire thing. I don't even know how the stealth works. I mean, I'm sure it's like pretty self-explanatory. I just haven't bothered with it because who needs stealth when you're invisible because you're wearing somebody else's clothing?
The Skitter approach.
It is great.
Just be invisible and then you stealth ?
I'm watching Wander playing Xenoblade right now, and I swear, I think one of his party members used pole dancing as an attack.
Okay, so that's the other thing I want to talk about. Now that I'm done with the,
you have my interest.
7th. Okay, So Xenoblade Chronicles is a series. They had a really, really successful JRPG on the Wii that they only released, like, I want to say 100,000 copies in the US. It was like some ridiculously low
people
quantity.
would have to buy it for like 80 to 100
there was
bucks
a huge
in stores.
there was a huge movement to petition to get the game ported to the US and Europe and stuff, because I guess they just decided that it wouldn't perform well in the US, and I ended up buying a used copy of the game for $80 because that was the only way I could
we got
get
it for 40. It was a good deal.
Right, we got it on sale. It was 80 normally, but we got it on sale at like a random GameStop. But I was super excited to get it. Never actually covered it on YouTube because it preceded my channel, but I always wanted to. And then there was Xenoblade Chronicles X, which was not a sequel, and in fact, probably not even the same universe. So kind of Final Fantasy style.
They have races that carry over and stuff.
Yeah.
It's a Xenoverse, obviously.
Yeah, and this is the director that made Xenosaga and Xenogears.
Oh, really? Xenosaga?
Yeah,
Oh.
it's the same guy.
All the Xeno games are related. Okay, I thought I was going
Sort
crazy
of.
with these names.
Yeah,
They're different universes.
Yeah, so they're
why are there
different
so
universes.
many Xeno series? I can't keep any of them straight.
It's effectively this one director. He has wanted to make a game, like a specific type of game for ages, but he's never succeeded, and so he kind of keeps rehashing similar ideas in different ways, and I think like the masterpiece really was Xenoblade. I don't think Xenogears ever got finished, or Xenosaga. I don't know. I never played
It's
them.
like Shin Megami Tensei.
Yeah, kind of.
Like, here's a series, and here's another similarly named series, and it's like because they have SMT, then they have Digital Devil Summoner, and then there's probably other things, and then also Persona, and they just keep adding more, but they're all kind of spinning off the same gameplay trope or whatever.
Yeah.
So this kind of does the same thing. So X was kind of like this slightly edgier, slightly more like sci-fi. They were trying to like a lot of new things, and some
like
hit,
mech
some,
battles and
stuff. They
whereas-
had. It was the first JRPG that I've ever played where you could hop in a mech suit and then keep playing JRPG style in a mech suit, and you had like increased stats accordingly and stuff like that. It was cool.
What I thought was cool about the original Xenoblade was everyone lived on the dead bodies of massive
these
monsters.
2 giant machines had killed themselves,
That was
and then
pretty
life
cool.
had started on it. Yeah, it was such a cool trope. So this actually
Goes all the way down.
Yeah, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 goes back to that. Everybody lives on the back of these giant animals.
But they're alive.
Yeah, the animals are alive in this one and moving around. So, like, they actually have mechanics for, like, how to figure out where they are so they don't get, like, stranded out at sea. Which is neat. But they also have kind of a monster collection system slash gacha system, which kind of sucks. It's one of those where you find these crystal cores, and you can get new companion characters by opening them up, and they will they will
Fell off the edge.
they will have like a random companion character in it, and there's I think 50 to choose from, but only like 30 uniques.
Whoa, what? I didn't know there were that many.
Sort of, but the thing is, none of the companion characters, they're all kind of pseudo randomly generated. They can be like a tank, an attacker, a healer, MMO roles, and they will have like a random element associated with them and a random weapon. And maybe the uniques have specific weapons.
And he's
I'm
been
not
fighting
entirely
a
sure.
lot of crabs.
But currently I'm grinding so I can get more because my audience is like, more gotcha, and I'm like, okay, fine. But so we were looking it up because I wanted to see how many unique, like what the best ones were, so I knew what to look out for. The answer is all of them are waifus.
What?
Nice.
Yeah. So like,
So that's why because I know that
Are they
Pyra
waifus
is
to
like
die
the
for?
main one that you're paired with, but then I know that this blue lady came up, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what's going on here?
yeah. So I just opened up like a random shitty core, and out pops this lady, and almost immediately the jiggle physics just start going insane. And she uses a spear, so of course her attacking style is pole dancing. Duh. And so every time I use a special attack with her, it's pole dancing. And I just am sitting here feeling kind of wildly uncomfortable because I'm like, I really liked the first Xenoblade because like they didn't have any of this.
The first Xenoblade didn't have any like
it had like
weird-
2 female characters, and they were modestly dressed and
The first one
fairly
looked really
modestly
interestingly different and fresh
shaped.
for the entire JRPG genre in the way that neither of the sequels so far look.
Yeah, the second one was kind of okay, but the third one definitely feels like a return to generic JRPG tropes across the board. The one thing that kind of stands out for the whole series is the voice acting, which is like actually the most divisive voice acting I've ever heard of. Instead of having American voice actors, which they usually do, they have like a ton of Welsh and Irish people. So like
the original Xenoblade was all British, though.
Yeah, it was all British. And Chillout actually pointed this out, that everybody's so used to kind of the prim and proper English accent, and we're not used to Cockney or Welsh or whatever, the thicker British
which are
accents.
Great. That's the best part of Ni no Kuni, which I was otherwise too bored to finish. But your fairy friend is like, I think he's Welsh, and it's great. It's like, I'm like, this is completely different. It's almost like a fantasy character or something.
But
the thing is, the main character in this is like an older Welsh guy.
yeah, the voice actor is a little bit too old for the kid that's the protagonist. I'm like, just age the main character up. He'd match perfectly, but no.
It's already weird that he's wearing shorts under his armor.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's the weird...
That's the thing I hate the most about the game. He's wearing a diving suit. And when he's not diving, he takes off a lot of it because, warm, I guess. Otherwise, he just looks like he's some weird snowman.
But he's wearing pants, but the pants only cover the outer half.
Of the protagonist the other day, and I could not find a single result in all of the images where he's actually wearing the helmet. He just has a bowl helmet sticking out the back of his neck all the time.
Yeah, I thought it was like some kind of weird reactor that was off his back, but no, that ends up being just the carrying case for the generic mascot character that is his grandfather.
His grandfather becomes a tiny critter.
So what percentage of the game have you seen that helmet on his head?
It's shown a lot in the first part of the game, and then whenever you do the little treasure hunting mini game,
diving,
and then other than that, he never puts it on ever. Though it frequently falls off
in combat.
Yeah, well, it frequently falls off in cutscenes and stuff, which is kind of amusing. Like, it'll get knocked away, and normally games would just leave it there, and it just looks stupid. But no, they actually treat it as an object, and I'm almost impressed by their commitment to it.
Does everyone already know the story about why the voices were that way last time around?
I don't remember the reason for Xenoblade Chronicles 1 now.
So what happened is the real reason for Operation Rainfall, the petition thing, was because Xenoblade and Last Story. First of all, there was just Wii fans in the United States that are like, we don't have any real video games. We just have party games and the next Mario game to wait for.
Yeah, we got Last Story as well.
That's the story that I'm talking about. Is they did Operation Rainfall to just petitioning Nintendo to localize these games because those were two games that they put out in only Europe. They never came out to the United States, even though they were already in English. And so, just give them to us. And so that's why Xenoblade
is all Welsh.
It's all British. Localized for Europe because it only came out in Europe for a year or two, and then they just gave that version to us. And so that's why it's so different. It's the most memorable thing about the game from the story perspective about talking about its general. Just talking about it as its place in the industry is it's this weird thing with European voice acting, but that's just a side effect of low effort porting because as a result of a petition.
But why did they exclude North America and other countries from it?
They
in the
didn't
first
think
place?
it would sell well.
Money.
Yeah.
Oh.
Japan's always been kind of tepid about releasing in U.S. markets because it's expensive.
There's still multiple Yakuza games I'll never be able to play because they're Japanese only, and that's a hard barrier to break.
I still remember when I was a kid being upset about how for the Japanese release of, I forget if it was gold, silver, and crystal, or if it was just in those first two, but you could actually play a mini game in one of the cities that you encounter in the middle of the game. And you can actually find a way to acquire Celebi.
Pokemon Gold and Silver.
Yeah, Pokemon.
Okay.
And Celebi is one of those legendary Pokemon that you can only get from special events. You have to have them downloaded. Now, of course, they do it at any GameStop or convention. You can download them that way over their Wi-Fi or whatnot, or get the special cards. Huh?
Yeah, they started partnering once Pokemon started getting online connectivity. They're just let's just
give everyone these legendaries for free. Let's not make them come to conventions or special events. But there used to be special events for Mew and Celebi. But I remember being
that's what I remember.
But yeah, I think Japanese players could actually get Celebi in their game, but they took out the whole like section of the building that would have gone into one of these Pokemon centers or whatever.
Yeah,
and they
I know
just
what you're talking about. There's a
chucked it.
shrine in the woods.
Yeah, the shrine in the woods,
Typically.
the bell.
Yep, that gave you Celebi.
I almost bought Pokemon Silver in Japanese before I realized that foreign languages were really a thing. Like, I knew they were a thing, but like, you know, I knew there was like Spanish, but like, I had never actually seen Japanese before, and
Wouldn't
like,
be
I
able
knew
to
there was
read it.
Chinese, but
You wouldn't
so,
even
like,
be able to recognize the letters, let alone read
yeah,
it.
well, that's the thing. I picked it up at a GameStop, and I was like 11, I want to say, tops. Like, this is super early on in my gaming.
What are these GameStops you're going to? I'm confused. You
I don't
find
know.
$80 copies of games and Japanese versions of games at GameStop, and I'm really confused.
They sound like good GameStops.
They are good GameStops. I've had nothing but exposure to like decent ones for some weird reason.
I've never
Even the
heard
one
of that
near
even
here-
being within the realm of possibility for that chain. I'm so confused.
But they had it in a glass case, and I was like, "Mom, it's Pokemon Silver. It's early. Can we buy it?" And she like comes over and looks at it, and she's like,
In Japanese.
"No, this is in Japanese. You're not going to know what you're doing." And I'm like, "Yes, I will. It's Pokemon. Like, duh." We didn't get it.
I
had to wait, but that was okay.
I was so upset when my cousin had gotten Pokemon Gold, and I'm like, but Crystal came out, maybe I'll get that. But I still had a Game Boy Pocket. But the Game Boy Pocket and the original Game Boy still played Silver and Gold just fine, even though they were the Game Boy Color releases. So I remember getting Crystal, and it wouldn't run on my Game Boy. And I'm like, no. So I had to get Silver instead and return
I'm just
it.
Oh
imagining
yeah,
it.
because it was an import cart, right?
Well,
You're
it was weird because for Gold and Silver, it would just make everything black and white if you had a Game Boy Pocket or an original Game Boy release. But for some reason, it only allowed you to play on the Game Boy Color. And then from then on, you had to keep getting the new systems. You couldn't just put in a Game Boy Color cart into a black and white system.
Gotta sell them SKUs. Listen, Nintendo has never not made their handheld market kind of confusing.
Yeah,
There's like 3 versions of each release, and some of them work on everything and some of them don't, and then
It's
some of them just
only
have
gotten
an
worse.
I on their name.
Ladybird was looking through the market because on our Nintendo DS to see if we should pick up any new games or something like that, and they're all like full price. They're all like $60 and like $50 games, and it's like I don't want to buy Pokemon, like a 2-year-old Pokemon game at like new release price. Like, bring that shit down a little bit.
Sounds
next
like
time.
someone's not going to play Pokemon then.
No,
I find
guess
that
not.
Pokemon games only lower in price if a newer version of them has been released and you can't trade things over from
Pokemon
the
games
old ones to
almost
the new
never
ones.
go
They
down.
really only
though.
go down in price secondhand.
Yeah,
I
and
was
even
gonna say
then,
they really
usually
don't.
goes up because
Yeah, because
like
I
I-
remember getting, what was it? It was White and Black 2. They had like their second versions.
yeah,
I remember getting that one ridiculously like under 20, brand new because
but that's because that one bombed. Like that, Black and White 2 were super unpopular comparatively.
true.
Yeah, well,
I
for
just wanted
whatever
to get
it's
Rush On
worth,
and stuff.
like by that point, I was so checked out of the Pokemon series. I was like, okay, they're remaking old ones, but only sometimes, and then they're making sequels to new ones, and
Mhm.
I'm old.
Yeah,
We
Never mind.
really liked Sun and Moon. Wait, no, not Sun and Moon. Sorry,
X
what,
and Y?
what am I? X and Y. We
I
really
didn't
liked.
even really like X and Y. It was
we played through it in one day.
well,
we were like,
we were sick for a weekend, so we're like, screw it, let's just play Pokemon.
and our apartment mate had it. And
I've
we
just
were all,
found them getting easier and easier, and I think it's because
were
I'm getting
always
better
easy.
and better. Well, I remember as a kid, I think
I
it
played
was
those games like an
Silver.
idiot, and I blazed through them. Like I never used anything in the entire game that wasn't an attack. If it wasn't an
Yeah.
attack, I unlearned it
Oh, yeah.
immediately. I'm like, what status effects? Psh! And I'd beat the whole game easily. Like they're such kids
Well,
games, but they
that's
have
still
gotten
true.
worse because I've seen Let's Plays at the beginning of the new one a little bit, and the Sun and Moon ones are like 5 hours of patronizing tutorials, and it's
Oh, yeah.
I know.
Sun
Sun and Moon
Moon
was
is also
terrible.
true.
sluggish. Yeah, they really need like a not a slider, but like a selector that's like, I know what I'm doing. Please don't do this.
20-some, nearly 30-some-year-old veteran of, yeah.
Seriously, I would love it if they actually made a Pokemon game that was like reasonably difficult. That's why I liked World of Final Fantasy, because it actually kicked my ass at times. It wasn't easy.
You know what every franchise needs is a only teach me the new things button.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
I selected hard mode in Sonic Forces, and it's like, press A to jump. I'm like, what are you telling me this for?
Oh yeah, and it would stop you too.
It would stop
be
you
like, press A to
teach you how to
jump.
jump and how to attack. I'm like, I picked hard mode, dude. I think I know how to play this game.
Um,
But you can't skip
yeah,
them because
so-
there's going to be the one new mechanic that they use to justify making the whole new game.
I was playing Sun and Moon for Pokemon, and I just refused to use any other Pokemon other than my starting one. And turns out, yeah, game doesn't even like handle it anymore. It's just like, yeah, you win. You're wildly overleveled.
Yeah, I think the problem with us playing Sun and Moon, we never even finished them, was because X and Y was nice because it was the first time they had made it into a 3D game. So it was nice seeing, like, the character customization too, and other things. It was just like brand new and exciting. But yeah, the tutorial at the very beginning is just like, I want to actually play the game. Also, why do we have the same, you're only living with your mother, and
There's never a father in the picture for some reason.
well, supposedly they said it had something to do with like the creator's own family life and like the lack of a father being present, or I don't know.
This is a way darker version of the inspiration Miyamoto usually cites. I like to go gardening, explore caves. I had a troubled family history.
I made Legend of Zelda because I went through holes around my house.
Oh, that was funny. I actually saw this on Twitter or something, but supposedly Pokemon was the like final answer for the, you know how in Jeopardy they have an open-ended question and everyone has to write down their answer and bet what they're going to do. So, it was like Shinji, I forgot what his name was, but he's the actual creator of Pokemon. And they say,
Shinji
you know,
Mikami?
maybe that's it.
It's literally just the first Shinji that came to mind. I'm trying to check it right now.
Okay, so they say, Capcom. You know, okay, so they say he was inspired to make this game because he loved collecting bugs, and the other people didn't know. Like one guy had guessed centipede, and I forget what the other lady had guessed. But
I'm gonna get so much shit for naming the guy that made Resident Evil.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, like, there's some nerd out there who like got him.
There was like,
I'm sorry to that
like
nerd. I didn't mean to imply you were a nerd.
I got a lot of
But
shit
you
for
also got
mistaking. I got a lot of shit for mistaking the voice actor for Nathan Drake in Uncharted, and then the voice actor for Joel, I believe, in Last of Us.
Oh yeah,
the two most overused voice actors ever.
Yeah,
I also get confused.
Yeah, shame
anytime
on
we
you.
hear...
Nathan Drake is actually the villain in that game.
I know, which
completely
I
different
was like,
voice
it's the same
actors.
guys. I know.
Meanwhile, the guy that plays Joel plays this kind of villain brother character in Uncharted 4. So how did you mix them up? These
That's
two
why I
characters
got
that are in games with each other constantly. Infuriating. They have way too much exposure. Like, good job on your job and everything, but oh my god, you can't escape them.
Good job on your job and everything.
Yeah, it's like, congrats on the
well
life.
phrased.
Congrats on the life, but I'm sick of it. You want to finish
So
your
Keith,
story, Shell?
Oh, so I was just saying the guy that actually guessed the correct answer just had the biggest grin on his face. Everyone was just laughing because of the absurdity of it. Pokemon, come on!
Oh,
Me,
where it
like-
was like so obvious. Yeah,
I played Pokemon as a kid because I'd never encountered an RPG before, so it was completely novel in every conceivable way at that moment. But the moment I played a BioWare game and I was like, ooh, a party of characters with personalities and actual design and depth, and I never went back. The moment I get party-based RPGs with actual characters, I'm like, I'm never playing a Pokemon game again. They're not characters. I want characters.
I had the same problem with Dragon Warrior Monsters, which had much deeper monster collection and like monster raising mechanics. So it's like after that, Pokemon just felt flat, and it has never stopped feeling flat to me.
I never had any other games for my Game Boy or Game Boy Color, and I never got a DS or any of the other DSs up until we got our 3DSs. So I just sort of, I mean, I was a fan of Pokemon when I was 7 to maybe my early teens, and
Never
it was
understood that about parents. Why are they
part of my
drop
childhood.
like so much money to get you the console and then buy you like 2 games for it?
Oh yeah,
It's like,
Hey, mine was
the
free.
console just age
Mine was
is like
free with the Nintendo
good.
64, the Star Wars Episode 1 Pod Racer Edition. You got it free.
Because parents think that your games will just last forever.
yeah.
It's like a toy. I got you a toy train. Play with it for 5 million hours.
we got a GameCube with Smash Brothers and Mario Party, and I had the gall to ask my parents for Phantasy Star Online, and my mother's like,
You already have video
Smash
games.
Bros?
You're done forever.
Yeah, go play the ones that you already have. And I'm like, I can't. My brother is way too fucking good at Smash Bros. I can't play anymore because he just shows up and either creams me or creams the bot. I'm just kind of there. And obviously Mario Party is the family thing. She's like, well, maybe we should play Mario Party tonight. And I'm like, I just want to play by myself.
We had a lot of Nintendo 64 games, but half of them were inherited from my cousin. But aside from that, really the only games that we bought consecutively, like as a series, were the missed ones as they came out. And yeah, that was pretty much it. Thinking back, we didn't really have that many video games at home, and we completely skipped the GameCube and went to the Wii.
Growing up, the best way to get a video game was for another parent to say that it was a great way to shut up their kids. And then like it'd go down the grapevine of parent word of mouth, essentially.
I was in the bad position of being the only kid on the block with a GameCube.
Oh,
Everyone wanted to come over.
The good news about the parents' total like lack of attentiveness, because like the downside was, of course, they're like, oh, just play what you already have, is what they'd always say. But the good side was that they wouldn't pay any attention to ratings on games either.
Oh, my parents cared about ratings.
I had Dead or Alive. I had Perfect Dark. I'm like 10 years old playing a game for 17-year-olds. I don't give a shit. Although
We didn't
Perfect
have
Dark
any
really
rated
doesn't
M
have
games.
anything extreme in it. I don't know why it's rated M.
However,
Guns.
half of my dad's films
That
from the
standard
80s
changed
were
a
rated
lot.
R, considering
Yeah,
they
it
were
did.
Alien and Terminator, and so I grew up with a lot of those.
It took us renting Battle Tanks 2 4 times before my mother finally caved and bought it, because she realized that we had already spent more money renting it from Blockbuster
Then it would have been
than it
to
would have
buy
been
it.
to just buy it used from Blockbuster.
I don't recall ever renting video games.
My Blockbuster had a lot of video games. For the N64, I don't think they had much for PlayStation, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I remember renting a lot of video games, and yeah,
For
just bought them.
Yeah.
yeah. For
I-
kids
I-
with short attention spans, though, like renting's pretty great because so many. When kids get video games, oftentimes they're done with them really quickly. Like they're ready to move on to anything else if the option arises. Like if you're stuck playing one game forever, then you get really attached to that and everything, and that's like your reality. But if you have the option of switching every week, everyone will take that as a kid.
It was
The
a good way to try games. Now that I think about it, we actually were able to get things from our library, like Marvel Ultimate Alliance.
Oh,
and
that
stuff.
didn't happen until later. For me. Like, the games didn't show up in the library until I hit high school.
The games
which
that
when
showed
it
up
was
in my
outdated.
library were like shitty games. It was like
Yeah.
Madden from 3 years ago, or Madden from 2 years ago, or NFL football from 2 years ago.
Why are there so many of those games?
Because people
Every
will
year?
buy them. It's like Call
Every-
of Duty.
Wow.
People will
Roster
buy the
update.
latest. Yeah, people will
Roster
do
updates.
roster updates, but also people will buy full price the latest version.
Yep.
Regardless, when easily they could just do DLC and just have like a 4-year cycle on the game.
It's also
Though,
that
from what
sports
I've-
games appeal to a specific part of the demographic that might only buy that game. Like
Yes.
they'll buy like FIFA and Madden every year and nothing else. And that's just the games they play. So like they don't even know about the concept in many cases of like DLC or the premise that they're getting ripped off. Really, they're just like, that's the one thing I play all year. It doesn't cost that much.
Yeah.
actually funny you mentioned Battle Tanks, because that was the one game my dad knew how to play in all of video games ever. And so we got a lot of mileage out of that. But I played it terribly. I would play as the mechanical people and hide in my base and just build gun buddies and then run.
That's what I would do. The gun buddy spam was my favorite, even though it was stupid.
I would spawn as the little go-kart over and over again, spawn a gun buddy, then charge into my enemy's base and get run over by their tank to just intentionally make them slower on the track over and over again.
Is that the strategy that's basically maximum passive?
It's my first ever tower defense game is what it became.
Yeah, that was my thing. I had never heard of a tower defense game before, and so Battle Tanks
exist yet.
Yeah.
Not till like StarCraft?
Yep.
Yeah. So when I found out about tower defenses in StarCraft, I was hooked.
I suppose when it came to like things like, we played a lot of RTSs on the PC, aside from the couple RPGs, like BioWare KOTOR related stuff, and puzzle games like Myst and Nancy Drew and Detective Barbie and all those things. We played Alpha Centauri and Dune 2000. I really liked Dune 2000, though you played a different Dune, didn't
Emperor
you?
Battle
Dune 2000
for Dune
was really good. That was like the first RTS.
I hated it when my spice collectors got ambushed by worms.
I mean, that was a game mechanic.
I know.
Yeah.
You had to constantly lead them onto solid ground.
That was Westwood, right? Like, that was one of their few
non-Red Alert
kind of
one, right?
Goodbye,
because I know
Westwood
Emperor Battle
forever.
for Dune was, yeah.
Westwood's in the EA graveyard.
Dune 2000 is Westwood, but I think, wasn't there an earlier one that wasn't?
I thought Emperor Battle for Dune was the,
You're right, they're both Westwood games.
Yeah.
Huh. I also liked the live action in that.
Yeah. Well, every Red
The
Alert
Gimli guy.
every Red Alert game had live voice acting, and it was always awesome.
Well, yeah.
Not even live
Compared to
voice acting. It
cutscenes-
was straight up live action cutscenes with like
Yeah, the cutscenes.
Compared to like the voice acting and the like character modeling in like games at that time, they were amazing.
One thing I always wondered, was House Ordo in the original Dune series,
No.
like the novels, or was it just made for
I
the
think
game?
maybe they
It
got
was made
mentioned,
for the
maybe
game,
they
I think.
existed, but
Was Tim
they were,
Curry in Red Alert?
Yes, he was.
I feel like he was.
Tim
I think
Curry
he
was
he
the
was the
leader of
was
the
it-
Russians in Red Alert 3.
The Russians?
Yeah.
Yep. And it was great. Because it was like
Oh, yeah,
full
there
ham
he is.
Tim Curry.
yeah, there he is.
That gives you a really good example and barometer of what they were going for with the acting in the Red Alert games. Is that they hired Tim
right.
Curry.
Red Alert 3 in particular, I remember was very tongue in cheek because the Empire of the Rising Sun, like that person, the person that represented them was played by George Takei.
Yeah. Well, that was actually that was the first EA Red Alert game, I believe.
I don't really remember. Yes, it was.
And it was also
It was
the last.
pretty good.
It was
Ew.
gameplay wise, it was good. Story wise, it was garbage. I hated it so much. They
They didn't have a lot of good material to work with.
I just remember the ending of one of the endings
The other
was
actor's
every
J.K.
single
Simmons.
female. Yeah, the president was J.K. Simmons. Like it would have been amazing, but it felt fan servicey to a fault. Like I specifically got, I think it was the Allied ending. You get every single female like character in the game in skimpier outfits than usual.
What?
Greeting you
How?
at the end, being like, "Thank you, Commander," and they're like in your room and they have like bottles and stuff, and I'm like, "What the fuck?" I just want to be like,
I'm sorry, are you suggesting there might be something fan servicey about a game that's about George Takei versus J.K. Simmons versus Tim Curry?
the weird part is that almost none of them ever actually interacted. Like, usually the times where like they would have been together, they were like separate, and also J.K. Simmons was a robot.
No.
Yeah.
That
The
seems like a
Japanese had replaced the
misuse.
US president, and so he was like kind of acting as a double agent.
Mecha
And you had to- Yeah, it was great. You actually had to like hunt him down and kill him
Does he
because
fire
he was
lasers?
about to unleash. He was about to unleash robot Mount Rushmore on the rest of the U.S.
What?
And you had to like take him down. Yeah, it was fucking nuts.
That's
it was
up
great.
there with the
This is so
ending of Metal Gear
weird.
Solid 2 where you get in a samurai sword fight with the president wearing an eye patch and octopus suit.
Hey, for whatever it's worth, Metal Gear Solid 2, I appreciate that game so much more now. As a kid, it was like playing a fever dream.
The worst thing
Like-
about that description is that by the time you get to the final boss, it's not even weird anymore.
It's not weird.
so much weirder shit has happened up till then that part's not even weird. But when you say it in its own, you're like, no, you fight, you get a sword fight with the president, who has an eye patch and like a Doc Ock suit on like a rooftop. What the fuck?
I was kind of desensitized because I actually watched the Metal Gear Solid games in reverse. Revengeance, 4, 3, 2, and I've never seen 1.
Revengeance is a weird place to start.
Exactly. I think I had like looked up Revengeance to see like what the hell the game was, because like I'd heard about it, I'd made jokes about it, but I personally had never
That's
own
the one
title
that
made jokes
features
about
that
it.
writing character.
yeah,
right?
exactly. What was that?
Does it feature the writing?
Yeah,
character?
it features Raiden, and it
'Cause
was
that was a
just
Platinum
weird.
game.
Yeah, it was Platinum. So I watched the Let's Play, and I'm like, this is actually kind of neat. I really thought it was like a much more Arma style, like legit military sim. I was very, very wrong.
I still wonder whatever. Like,
And
we
then you
never
watched
did
4 first, which is the ending of the entire story.
Yeah,
Is that what you
so I had seen Revengeance, and then I went to college. Was that it? No, I was at college and I borrowed somebody's copy and I played the first mission. I'm like, oh yeah, this really is like Revengeance, because I just figured Revengeance was kind of like an outlier because everybody called it that. And it was also kind of this unique, weird thing. And I was just like, now I have to go back and see all of them. And 3 was my favorite by far.
That's a bizarre way to go through the series.
Yeah,
It was interesting.
Although at this point, I mean, I gotta admit that I've played 5, which is the entire premise of 5 is to try to explain the story of Metal Gear 1 and reconcile it with Metal Gear Solid 3. And I never played Metal Gear 1, so this is meaningless to me, but okay.
I mean, there were some people that it meant something to. Probably a couple dozen that played the first Metal Gear.
That specific
virtually
brand of people that
unplayable,
played
though.
every single game in the franchise.
Oh yeah, what was
the controls of the first game are just awful.
what was the one game that you were telling me about the other day where there were just no copies available anywhere? Like they actually took it off Steam and stuff. Was that something from the last podcast or Divinity?
Did have a
Trying
couple
to-
games. I don't remember which one
Oh,
you're
was
talking
that
about
Wake?
though.
Alan Wake.
Wake?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Alan Wake is like kind of was everywhere, but the soundtrack got copyrighted, so it's I don't know if you can buy the first one, which was I think the
can't
better
buy
one.
it. No.
Just gone now. They had a big announcement like, it's 99% off. Everyone grab it now. It's going to be gone forever because we're not going to bother renewing this license. Is basically what happened.
Well, it's because Remedy Entertainment shut down.
Oh wait, why would they have a license
Oh,
that was
no, they didn't.
under
No, they
did
didn't.
Quantum Break.
20 years or something
I thought they had
for
shut
a
down.
game?
No, they
Unless
just
it seems
literally,
that old.
literally just
Small
aren't.
indie title. So
They're just not renewing the license. That's all that's happening.
Yep. But
So they're just like,
if
it's
you-
going to die forever now. It'll only exist as physical copies on Xbox 360, basically.
Yep. And if you have it in your Steam library, obviously you get to keep it. But
Meanwhile,
10,
Humble
20 years
Bundle's
from now,
throwing Quantum Break at us in the monthly bundle right now.
I kind of like that. I heard about that game, but since it was like a Windows Store / Xbox exclusive, I was just like,
it's
well,
not
I'm not
bad.
getting this.
It's kind of like Portal, but also narrated
It's
by
not.
Q.
It's not like Portal.
It's exactly like Portal.
It's part of that trend of hyper cinematic third-person shooters that are all the same.
This is a completely different game than the one I
Yeah,
was
you're thinking of a different game. Quantum Break has the guy that played Iceman and X-Men and Jake and Animorphs, and he's like,
Oh yeah,
he can break reality kind of and time travel a little bit, and it was the one that had that really weird gimmick where every few hours in the game you would stop playing and then watch like an episode of a like a sci-fi original series basically, and then make a decision at the end. So it was a hybrid television show video game, which is why I never let's played it. I'm like, it's a part of it's a movie basically. I can't upload that.
wait a minute. Did any? I remember Halo was going to do something similar. They were going to have like little DLCs with essentially an episode's worth of cutscenes and
there
content.
have been a bunch of Halo standalone movies and animated shorts and books and stuff like that. I think the movie shorts or whatever are on Netflix or YouTube or something.
I've seen all of those, but I think they actually said that they're going to have little, sort of like a mini version of their game series. I suppose they never went through with it then. You're supposed to buy them as maybe $5 to $10 DLCs and have like an ongoing story that spans across them. But nah, I suppose they didn't. Bungie's been focusing on Destiny instead, probably. What else are they up to?
Well,
they're exclusively Destiny now.
Yeah, Bungie stopped with the Halo series after Halo Reach, which was the last one we played.
Yeah, the moment Destiny became
4,
a thing,
right?
they've been only making Destiny.
Yep.
So what's going on with Halo is something that goes on with Gears of War and a bunch of other franchises is that Microsoft will not let anything die ever. So if they have a property, what they do is they slowly wring the life out of the company that makes that property until they do the same thing across the board, which is they always make 1, 2, 3, then they make a fourth game that doesn't have a number but instead has a subtitle, and then that company leaves, and then the company comes back for game name 4, but it's made by a different company and everyone hates it. It's happened like 4 times. The exact pattern.
The game I was thinking of is called Quantum Conundrum.
Yeah, that game is like Portal and narrated by Q.
Yeah, so I kind of read up a lot about this a little bit because I thought it was interesting now. So that was a game that was developed or directed by Kim Swift, who was one of the people that made Narbacular Drop, which Valve bought, basically, and bought the people that made that, and then they went on to make Portal. So she was like the lead designer of Portal, and then she made this game. And then after that, she got hired to work at Amazon Video Game Studios. Then after that, I think you're going to find this funny. She was hired to work as the design director for Motive Studios under EA.
So she worked for Battlefront 2.
She released Star Wars Battlefront 2.
The AAA just ruins everything, apparently.
Yeah.
Are you interesting and made one of the most impactful and inspirational puzzle games in the last, 20 years? Let's ruin that.
Yeah. I think it's the AAA publisher that owns the developer.
Yeah.
Because, that's what happened to Metal Gear Solid. They eventually oust Kojima. Now they're making, Metal Gear Survive, which, let's be honest, we might actually cover. Just because zombie survival is my jam, even if it's always garbage. But, EA, Activision, arguably Blizzard? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, because now it's on the Blizzard app.
I'm not against Blizzard necessarily, but I would really like a Warcraft 4. But it's never going to happen.
Because they announced Battle for Azeroth, where they're going to push off the factions from their continents and making all of Kalimdor Horde and
they've
all
run
of
out of boogeymen to kill.
Eastern Kingdoms, the Alliance.
Just bring them back.
They're going to burn down Teldrassil.
Well, you're right. No. That's what they did with Legion. They brought back the Burning Legion and then killed them for good.
It's distressing that at this point, 90% of all Warcraft content ever is World of Warcraft, and yet almost all of it is trying to feed off of what was in the first 3 games, even though the majority of people playing that game never played those.
Yeah.
You could just make shit up. You could just make new stuff like Riders do when they make a universe.
I was so confused when Medivh showed up, the meddling crow in
we gotta
Warcraft
fight
3.
Illidan twice, don't you get it?
Yeah,
We gotta bring him back and make him the boss of another expansion.
I find it very interesting that
actually he's like the hero at the end of this one. Oh, Legion.
It's just infuriating though.
The core
I killed
lore.
Illidan, that's when I quit.
The core lore of Warcraft hasn't changed since Warcraft 3 basically.
Yep.
Pretty much.
They add a whole bunch of World of Warcraft adds on so much, but it's always built around the same structure that basically came out of Warcraft 3, which was built off of Warcraft 2, which was built off of Warcraft 1.
And
but
doesn't
doesn't
WoW massively just demystify everything too? Because it's what happened to that character in the end? He got killed by some schmucks in a party. 40 dudes just stomped down his door and kicked his ass.
what happened to?
That's the ending of 500 different character stories now as they got stomped by some dudes. Who?
What happened to Deathwing? Oh, you kill him. Okay, what happened to Ilaria? She's over there. She gives quests now. What happened to Turellian? He's over there. He gives quests now.
Ilaria
it's like the ending of every character is the Battle of Five Armies.
Faction leader for the Void Elves, which are a new race coming out.
Why? Why are they?
She absorbed void energy, and now she's a void elf.
A void elf. So drow? I don't know.
Actually, they look sort of pale and vampiric with a lot of like glowy, purpley blue wisps in their
What kind of elf has
stuff.
Ilaria not been at this point? She's a high elf.
What, is
then she became like a
Ichigo?
drainer elf, and now she's a void elf.
So she's Ichigo, where she just gets she becomes part everything over the course of the story until the story just breaks, and everyone stops reading.
And Sylvanas is the new war chief, and I don't really know what's up with Verisa.
Listen, I got a new character for you, Blizzard. His name's Chuck. He likes his kids. He wants to work on his motorcycle. I don't know. We could ad-lib and make it. There's motorcycles in WoW now.
Yeah,
my character had a motorcycle when I made a Tauren. I could run around with a motorcycle. So
once they added the gnomes that were able to like invent shit, I feel like that really went off the rails.
No, but the real reason the motorcycles are in the game is because they had a cross-brand deal with the motorcycle reality show, and then they had to put them in the game, and now that's part of the
Wait,
lore.
what?
Chopper. So they had a crossover thing.
As a Ralphie choppers.
No way.
Yep.
Really?
Well, didn't they also make the goblins tinkery too?
Yeah, to compete with the gnomes. I mean, it's kind of a neat universe thing, and unless you do some like interesting stuff, it just also
Star Wars did, where it just became exhausting. The universe just became exhausting and overcrowded with stuff that just isn't interesting. And it's just it's too much of a product now. It's just oh well.
Isn't Chris Metzen retired too?
He may have recently.
Don't know.
Let me see. Yeah, he retired in 2016. So for people who don't know who Chris is, he's basically the guy that made all of the lore for Warcraft and like did all of the universe building for them, for better or worse. I mean, I always found his stuff to be like not very inspired, but I mean, he made it work and
it was inspired, all right. It was inspired by Warhammer.
Yeah,
well, regardless,
it borrowed from everything.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. But the point is, like, he left Blizzard, and I wonder if the company's going to be is going to be torn down by that or not.
I
mean,
they
it doesn't matter because
have had too much of it.
They haven't had any time really to like make anything sensey left to.
Overwatch has taken over.
That. Yeah. Well, between Overwatch and Hearthstone, they don't need story anymore. They just need like pure gameplay kind of distilled for everybody to consume.
Which is probably for the best if all the writers are gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, who made the I wonder who is considered like the lore god of the Overwatch world. I
don't know.
Warcraft was really like Chris Metzen's baby. StarCraft too. And I don't see him being tied like nearly as tightly to Overwatch.
Warcraft just kind of suffers from the Assassin's Creed effect where like it becomes just a fact that the next product's going to come out at this time in this way, and that's going to happen no matter what. So just try to slap a story onto it, but it's not happening because of the story, even though the universe is defined by having a story, basically. So for those that don't know what happened in Assassin's Creed, like the first two games had like the first one sets up the world and has a cool anime stuff going on. The second one has this really climactic, like earth-shattering revelation of an ending. And then they follow up on that by having the next game not follow up on it even a little bit and be like, it literally opens with a character named Mario losing the thing you spent the whole last game getting, so you have to go get it again. So it's like a Mario character saying to you, like, your princess is another castle, essentially. So you play an entire game just re-accomplishing what you accomplished last game, just so that the next game can then just put you in a coma so they don't have to make any more story.
It seems like they just want to go to every continent, every like great civilization, and every time period, and create a new Assassin's Creed game based on those. Because now it's Egypt.
That's the issue. Is like it started off with like a narrative and an arc and revelations planned, but Ubisoft was like, "Can you make it every year now?" And so it became an annual franchise where a whole new open world game had to be made every single year, which meant that was the priority. Was like, what's this new game's gimmick? It's in the United States. This one's in Egypt, and that was the only. And we're shipping an Egypt game on this day, and that was the whole bullet point. And then you just have to you have to reverse engineer it for that purpose.
Didn't they have a Chinese or Japanese one, but it never came out?
There was a Japan, Russia, and China one that were all side-scrolling,
Mobile.
cartoony ones.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. I had to laugh at that one because they were like, we're taking a year off of Assassin's Creed, and then 3 Assassin's Creed games came out that year.
One
but there
question
were those
though,
ones.
this guy's genealogy must be like really mixed.
Oh no,
if
it's
he
different
has
characters.
like ancestors. Oh, it's different characters.
Yeah,
because I thought that he was only
He's not
able
the
to see into his
omni-person.
I mean,
into his own ancestors.
he's still a little
like,
mixed because
memories.
Ezio and Altair and Connor were all his ancestors. But after Assassin's Creed 3, Desmond's no longer the character. And they just give up half the time. Like, they have so little story to tell sometimes that when you get to Unity, you just press start on the game and it boots the Animus software on the screen, and then you just play as the Kai from the past, and it never explains who's in the Animus at any point in the game. There's just no meta story because they've just given up at that point. It's just a weird nightmare. I've been playing an interesting game lately. That's also a weird nightmare. It goes in that charming Elex category of just like these middle grade RPGs that are like memorable and interesting enough to justify playing them, but there's so many weird rough edges, but you kind of prefer that over playing something that has fewer rough edges but is so boring. I've been playing
Like
a game
Andromeda?
called Lost Dimension. Which, have you guys
Okay.
heard of the game Resistance, the tabletop game?
Yeah. Well, I think
Okay.
you brought up Lost Dimension a couple podcasts ago.
I don't
was
think I
Lost
did,
Dimension?
or
Can you
if
look
I
up an
did,
image
I
of
hadn't
it?
played it yet. I might
Yeah,
have
you
just
hadn't
like
played
looked
it yet.
at it.
You were talking about how you were like out to find the traitor, but you hadn't like
Because now
gotten
I've
into
actually played the game, so I can talk about what it's actually like, which is a lot of things I thought it would be, and a lot of things I wouldn't be, kind of. But the core gameplay is somewhat comparable to like Valkyria Chronicles and this weird mishmash of like these turn-based Japanese RPGs where you oddly do the turn in real time. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like it's not like XCOM where you're like a glorified menu and clicking on a place and he runs to it. Like it's turn-based, but during your character's turn, you manually control them to make them run around and hit things, and then they stop when they run out of actions. Actually, it's like Grand Kingdom, because you played that, didn't you, Wander?
a little, yeah.
That kind of weird feel of like trying to move the exact amount of spaces before you run out and your turn automatically ends or something, which was super awkward in that game. And this one, you can thankfully do the manual movement multiple times and keep hitting B to like cancel it and try again.
yeah.
Because it's so awkward to control a JRPG character in real time to stop in the exact same position you want them to be and face the right direction, and all that stuff is a mess. But it's got this combat for that where you're just fighting robots and whatnot, and trying to win these turn-based combats. But what's interesting is that the game's divided into 5 floors as you're climbing this tower, and every tower floor, seemingly a new traitor gets revealed. I think the reasoning is supposed to be that everyone has locked memories, and essentially every floor, someone who already was a traitor, like essentially remembers they're a traitor, like in the Resident Evil movie, basically, and that's happening 5 times conveniently. What happens is that your character, every character has some kind of different psychic power, basically. You have a pyrokinetic, you have a telekinetic, you have a teleporting guy. Your character is actually like Professor X, so you can like sort of kind of read minds in this sort of vague, slightly unhelpful way, because it's just broken enough to make the game work, because otherwise you would just instantly know the traitors every time. What happens is you will pick your party the way you do in XCOM and stuff like that out of this larger pool of characters. So you have like 10 characters and you'll pick like 5 for a particular mission, and when you finish the mission, you hear a certain number of voices indicating how many suspicious people are in the party. And so it adds this weird meta system where you're trying to narrow down who the traitor is by bringing different configurations of people, and you'll hear different numbers of suspicious voices with each party configuration, and then you can check your list. You can check your history of like how many voices you got with each party and try to deduce from there who the 3 sources of suspicious voices are, because there's always 3. And so it's much like the Resistance tabletop game where you're picking different configurations of teammates, and then trying to figure out who's sitting around the table as the traitors. And the additional layer is that you can then, every time you do a main mission, you get 1 vision point. And so you get 3 vision points total per floor. And so if you can narrow it down to who the 3 sources of suspicious voices are, you can then use the vision points to go into their brains to figure out for sure if they are the traitor or not. So they give you just enough per floor to go after the 3 people if you can narrow it down to them. Mm-hmm. But then there's an additional layer of weird, because the game has a reputation system of what everyone thinks of everybody else in the party. And some people in the party, what happens is when it's time to figure out who the traitor is and choose them, everyone sits around in a circle and votes on them, kind of like in like Danganronpa and stuff like that. So you have to, on top of figuring out who the traitor is, manage everyone else's opinions of who the traitor is. Because once you narrow down who the traitor is, you have to convince everybody else to vote for that person. And half the party, like half the characters will vote for, they'll just vote for whoever's least useful. So if you don't take people on missions and they have a low battle ranking overall because you keep not using them in missions, people want to vote for those people because they're not useful for the party. And then the other half of the people will vote for people based on their reputation, which is that everyone has a different link, like a different level of friendliness with every individual other character in the party, which you can view on a menu, and they'll vote for who they like the least, basically. And so you have to manage the reputations and battle rankings of characters to try to get the votes to lean towards whoever is the actual traitor. Otherwise, you'll kill off an innocent character and still have a traitor in your party when an additional traitor is revealed next floor also.
Yeah, because I suppose, especially if you have to deduce which ones are traitors by taking them with you on missions, doesn't that mean that the ones that are completely innocent are more likely to be underleveled?
Yep.
So the good news is the party max is like half your overall roster, and your goal is to rotate to completely, like, you'll do 6 missions per floor, and you want to have a completely different configuration every time to get as much information as possible so you can deduce who the traitors are. So you should be rotating everyone in and out over the course of the floor, more or less, is more or less we want to go for there. The problem I have with this game is that it's a JRPG, and that's in a very specific way, which is that, you know how Japanese RPGs never shut up? This game never shuts up. It talks so much. But here's the problem. Like, it's not like your average JRPG where it just has so much story to tell. This game has, like, no story to tell. It feels like there's a corporate mandate for how much dialogue the game has to have or something, so they just repeat themselves a lot, or they just, like, rephrase the same conversations and stuff like that.
And do the characters converse with one another, and that's how they get their positive or negative, like, ratings with one another? Like,
there's
if
no
one insults
explicit
another,
reputation change from dialogue between characters necessarily, but they do talk with each other sometimes, but it's really rare. What's more likely is that they talk at each other, which is that a conversation will happen where every, you know the anime reaction shot where every single character in the room reacts to a thing one by one, which always happens when you have a large party. So you'll start a mission and like every person will say their pre-canned thing that sounds kind of like part of a conversation, but not really, and they're totally interchangeable, and you could skip half of them and it wouldn't affect the outcome, essentially. That's how most of the party dialogue
and then everyone
works.
goes, oh,
like,
we don't like that person.
That's how it works in Xenoblade.
Like, there's somebody who will just constantly be all like, it's like, I don't like going into battle thinking that somebody might stab me in the back, and they'll say that like 7 times in a row, but like different versions of it every fight, basically. Like, they'll say a new version of it, because it's always new dialogue. They're not actually looping, but they have nothing new to say, but they, for some reason, feel the need to include dialogue. Like, I had to just stop and rant at the screen during my last video I made, where I'm just like, this game would be better served if it was like This War of Mine, where the characters are like a vague character archetype or something, but they don't like talk, really. They just, like, you could have a few conversations that just set up what type of character each character is, but like, the game has nothing to say, but feels like because of its genre, it seems to think it has to talk constantly. Whereas like it could easily be like this War of Mine or games like that where like it's just a character on the screen with a portrait and a name and a personality, likes and dislikes, and you just play video game mechanically from there on out. Because the worst part is that despite how talkative the game is, the level of all the dialogue that you have with the characters doesn't help you deduce who the traitor is. It's purely that weird like system where you get pings essentially and tallies, and you try to figure that out that way. So it's not a mystery. This isn't like 999 or something where like information's going to come out that might come up later then reveal who the traitor is, because the traitors are randomly selected every time you play the game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they're so disposable and interchangeable that it feels like the game's just wasting your time. You also get to manually level up 9 different characters and manually equip their equipment every floor, so that's fun.
Oh.
Every single one has a unique skill tree.
I ran into that with Xenoblade, and it was like super controversial at the time for like the people watching, because I actually turned off game voices except for cutscenes, because every battle would start with everybody shouting their like, you know, I'm ready for this, but like they'd all shout at the same time, and then they'd shout like those, but also like whenever they attack. Whenever they use a special attack, sometimes
they get damaged. Oh, that's terrible.
Sometimes they'd actually be doing 3 lines at once, and it truly was just torture.
The same character saying 3
Yeah, it was an awful cacophony, and I was like, I can't, like, I turned it down, but like I could barely even hear the music because it was just this awful noise. So eventually I'm just like, screw it. They're not even saying anything interesting. Like, one character said something interesting once, and then she said it 5 times again in the next 20 minutes, and I'm like, all right, I give up. And so I just shut it off, and like some people got really mad about that. I'm like, can you even hear it? Are you really?
It's Stockholm syndrome. They're just conditioned to it now, and they can't escape it. And if you turn it off,
that was part of it.
They'll forget that they might forget it's anime for 5 seconds, and then forget they're supposed to like it. They got to constantly get drilled back in their head.
I think some people had even wanted you to change the audio to Japanese.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's because of the voice acting, but we already talked about that. I mean, that's also always true of anything that has dual audio. Somebody or multiple somebodies will always want the Japanese, but thing is, the subtitles for this game are partial. You can turn them on, but they're not actually going to cover the whole game. I've had whole cutscenes that don't have subtitles, and I'm like, if I turned on Japanese voice acting,
you would know what they're saying.
I actually would have no idea what's going on anymore.
Yep.
Yeah, it was like when we were watching Avengers in Croatia, because it came out there, and for the whole scene where Black Widow's speaking with Russians, we didn't understand what they were saying because the subtitles were in Croatian rather than English.
That was dumb, but also whatever.
Well, fortunately, we could get the gist of what was happening. The whole
really
scene.
Nice
we didn't need to know.
That was actually one of the nicest theaters I've ever been in. Let's see. Did you have another game you wanted to talk about, Keith?
Sorry, I was reading over an old comment of when somebody was telling me to switch to subs versus dubs. It's almost become like a mini meme in my channel, is referring back to this one conversation that happened a while ago. Every time I play a new Japanese game that has Japanese voice acting as an option, is that I tried to explain to somebody that videos do better. The videos generally do better when the game's in English, because like the people that do the subs versus dubs purist argument are like more of a minority than they like to think they are. And the response is like, would be natural since there are more kids on YouTube. Yes, all the kids want to watch dubs, and some teens to adults with low standards want to watch poorly executed dubs as well. So yeah, shouldn't be a surprise that dubs are generally better received. My request was for my own sake, since I don't care about those other idiots. Also, it would make your videos cleaner to the eyes of many. Also, if you are an adult to teen that thinks a dub with the standard is better than good quality Japanese voice acting, then you are a fucking idiot in my eyes. And I just responded, so switch to subs if you want to grow an audience of condescending elitists. Got it.
Yep, I remember that.
Quite frankly, I think the only reason...
That is a funny comment, dude.
Well,
it's a very jaded attitude, I must say. The response is just as bad.
That's hilarious. But one thing I've always thought was, maybe some of the Japanese dubs that we've been watching, maybe the Japanese think that their actors are terrible, but we wouldn't know because we don't speak the language.
Well, that's the thing for me, yeah.
Yeah, for Xenoblade, people are complaining that the lead female character's voice is high-pitched and annoying. And I'm just like, well, don't have to deal with that. Her voice actor is like actually really good in English.
Yeah, people always talk about Japanese voice acting, but the problem is that like Japanese is completely incompatible with English on like sentence structure and grammar and almost everything about it, basically. So as an English viewer that is not like has not conditioned myself through huge amounts of Japanese voice acting exposure, I literally I can't read the emotion half the time. Like obviously I can read the emotion of the sentence overall. But like when you listen to when you have like when you have a voice acting performance that's in your language, individual words can have meaning with the way they're said. And that's completely lost if you're watching somebody else's language. So yes, the localized version might not do it correctly. So they might screw that up, but it's still like anything they do, like any amount of voice direction that's saying like, "Oh yeah, sell this way" and stuff like that, only works if you're reading in your language, because otherwise you're like, I don't know, they're shouting. She sounds kind of sad is the best I can get sometimes from like the Japanese voice acting. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't understand the language, so I can't. It's less emotionally affecting for me because I can't tell what they're going for half the time. There's no you can't get any subtlety out of it.
So, on topic of people with unreasonable demands, I see you've already found the commenter on my 7 video.
Chastising you from receiving free games.
Yes, I was actually going to bring that up, and then I noticed you had responded immediately after me. So, Bird, seeing as you're the only one that doesn't know, plus, you know, obviously people watching this.
I mean, that guy's just so far up his own ass because he's in that mode of like, I have to be right now, so I'm just going to make the most stupid possible responses that, because like he cares more about being right than making any sort of point or being correct even.
So let's back up. I'm just going to give the summation of, I said I got a free copy of 7 because I thought it looked neat and I requested a copy and the developer sent it over, and he's like, why are you getting free games? Like, more or less, you're robbing poor indie developers of like the hard-earned money just so that you can play a game on your channel. I'm like, they sent it to me. Like,
you're robbing people of things that they willingly give.
Yeah, and I'm like, you make it sound like I'm this asshole that's stealing from them, but I said, hey, could I have the game? And they're like, yeah, sure thing. Have fun. And I'm like, yep, having fun. And that was it. This guy,
not a developer.
No.
Yeah, and this guy is like, shoot, I don't even other people like tearing him to shreds, and he's just like, you're not part of this argument, so go away. And it's just like
and every response he makes is more about the phrasing of the person that responded to them as opposed to what they're actually saying, because he's so in a corner and can't actually defend his points anymore. But so you made the normal argument, which is that you play dozens of games every month and it quickly becomes unsustainable to purchase all of them for full price in order to cover them. So like the channel wouldn't work at that point, which is not even new, because that's how like game reviewers worked. Like across history, all those game reviewers that write for magazines and crap and websites, like they make like no money. So like those $60 games they're reviewing like 2 or 3 of per week have to just arrive for free half the time, or it's like untenable to do. Even going past the whole part where you have to cover it in advance so that you can actually have the video ready or the review ready on launch day or before and stuff like that. But also like if like he claims that like it's unproven that Let's Plays have an impact on like sales, but like if that was true, then why is everybody so obsessed with sending Let's Players copies of their games? It's almost as if they have years and years of evidence that this works for them, otherwise they would just stop.
I think the point is nobody has ever like sat down and measured it, because you kind of can't measure how. Yeah, because you can't like. There's no control. You can't measure it
unless you have a game that has 0 audience period, and then PewDiePie plays it, and then you can measure the exact boost.
The only way that you could measure it would be like releasing something like Pokemon Gold and Silver and only handing Silver out to YouTubers and then banning anybody that covers Pokemon Gold and, seeing if that affects sales. But like, that's obviously the
see if one of them sells disproportionately better.
Yeah.
That'd be bizarre.
That would be like the bizarre crazy person's approach.
Yeah. The problem is you can't get scientific data because you can't have a control.
Yeah.
It's because the Control would always be a different game with different marketing and just different appeals, so it wouldn't they would never sell identically. But yeah, like, of course coverage of games increases their sales, otherwise they wouldn't be trying so hard for coverage of games all the time, forever. Every time an indie developer goes to, like, Joystick or Polygon or whatever to complain about their failing career and stuff like that, they always talk about, like, how like nobody covered their game. Like, every single time, from, like, Brigador to, like, that dungeon crawler tower game I was thinking about playing recently, where, like, there was a whole dedicated Polygon article to be like, oh yeah, no YouTubers covered my game, so I'm fucked. I jumped in the deep end to do this, and it's not paying off.
Yeah, and if you think about it, I mean, this is a wonderful age where a lot of people can self-publish. Beforehand, you had to go through major companies, you had to get major funding in order to get any project off on their feet. But now that you can create your own products and release them online, it's really, a lot of it has to be like word of mouth, people giving good reviews,
which is why you have, like,
there.
It's why you have, like, the developers and publishers of games sometimes, like, in the comment section, like, interacting with fans and stuff like that to try to, like, put on a good face for the game and everything, because, like, these videos can make or break these people's careers sometimes.
Yeah,
like I've had the video it came out yesterday and has 10,000 views. Like, that's not inconsiderable. That's worth giving out one free copy that doesn't cost anything to somebody that likely was not going to buy the game otherwise. And then you can turn that into maybe dozens or hundreds of sales, and for larger YouTubers, way more. That's huge.
Oh yeah, and back in the day when YouTube Let's Plays were first starting, I remember sometimes I think to myself, oh, will I like a video game? Will I like the characters and what the actual environments are? You know, maybe I'll find a Let's Play and see if this is something that I could actually get into.
Yeah.
They replaced reviews and demos.
The
basically.
other thing to point out is AAA developers oftentimes, literally half of the budget is marketing.
Yep.
And so as an indie developer, you can't really afford that.
Nope.
The idea of people voluntarily promoting your game for the cheap cost of one Steam key, which doesn't even cost the developer anything apart from, I guess, the lost sale for that one person. It's like kind of no-brainer.
It would be an interesting idea to poll, like, people in your audience and, like, get enough of a poll to be like, you know, did you buy this game or did you not buy this game because you watched me?
Yeah.
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 I mean, on a regular basis, I pick up an indie game or a puzzle game and people will respond being like, all right, I'm stopping watching now because I need to go play through it now, and then come back.
Yeah. You should see the amount of people from my audience that are like, I have played so much Slay the Spire because you started covering this. And I'm like, yes, it's a good game.
Yeah, so audience out there, if you ever find yourself doubting that indie games are in desperate, horrible, hungry desire for exposure, just think about the stat that 36.9% of all games on Steam have never been played by a single person ever.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Yep.
Ow.
So yes, they really want exposure, because a third of them have never been launched.
I suppose I have encountered a number of games that have not even a single review.
Yeah, there's a lot of shovelware out there.
Yeah, there's the shovelware too, but there's
worse.
also, like, so many games that just, like, if that many can be completely unplayed, think about how many just, like, I got sold 10 copies.
Yeah.
That was worth it, right? That'll pay my mortgage for this week.
Well, I think that's all the time we have, right?
On that depressing note.
Yep.
See you guys next time.
We have to cut this a little bit short for various reasons, but it's my fault. We'll go with that.
For various reasons that are all my fault.
Yeah, we'll go with it. It's my fault. So
now it's Divinity's fault. Let's place blame where it belongs.
See you guys next time.
Yeah.